There's kind of an unwritten rule in punk rock. If you sign to a major or you sell your song to a commercial or a movie or something, you, my friend, are a sellout. And there's nothing worse than to be called a sellout in the punk scene. That's like the end of your punk career before it even started. And if you're even going into it thinking punk career is two words that can go together, well then right away, you're already a poser, you're already a sellout, get the hell out of here, all right? Well, that's like the old mentality of what a sellout is. I don't necessarily agree with that being the definition of being a sellout. I think being a sellout is selling out your own integrity, selling out your own morals, selling out your own beliefs in order to sell songs, in order to make money, in order to please a higher echelon of crowd, okay? If you're selling out yourself, then you're a sellout. So today, we're going to be talking about the first band that kind of kicked off this argument in the 90s. We're going to be talking about Green Day. Well, they wouldn't be the first band to kick off this conversation in the 90s. I would give that honor more so to Nirvana. And Nirvana blew up organically, authentically, and they wouldn't sell out for anybody. But that's a topic for another day. And the existence of Nirvana plays a huge role in the growth of Green Day. Hey, how's it going? It's your friendly neighborhood gatekeeper Dan Frampton here, and today we're going to explore the early days of Green Day to determine, are these guys really sellouts? They've made the most money off of punk rock, they come from very authentic roots in punk rock, and they're selling out stadiums all over the world to this day with the classic lineup. Not the original lineup, but the classic lineup. They've changed their look, aesthetic, and sound along the way, but that could be all chopped up to just like wanting to try new things. But we're not gonna go through the entire history of Green Day. We're just gonna go back to the early days, and we're gonna determine if they could actually be called sellouts when they signed to a major and put out Dookie. That's right, I pronounce it Dookie. Like cookie with a D. It's what a cookie turns into when it comes out your B. So the beginning of this tale is gonna bring us to the Bay Area in California in the late 80s, okay? We got Billy Joe Armstrong. He's like a 16-year-old kid in high school. But even before any of that, we have to talk about Larry Livermore and the Lookouts, okay? The Lookouts were the band by Larry Livermore, and the drummer in that band would play a huge role in Green Day going forward. That guy would be named Trey Cool. And Larry Livermore was like, I don't know, 1,000,000 years older than everybody else in the Lookouts over here. And we got a young Trey Cool doing the big peace sign, and like an 1,000,000-year-old Larry Livermore already on the end over here. You gotta love to see it. And Larry Livermore of the Lookouts would go on to start Lookout Records, and he'd go listen to bands. He would go look out for other bands, as it were. And there was this band known as Sweet Children, okay? And that band with Sweet Children would be the original Green Day minus Trey Cool. They had some other schmuck playing drums for them at the time, but Sweet Children showed a knack for catchy hooks and basically just ramping up 60s rock and roll style and just saturating it in distortion and speed and snarl. And it was during one of these early Sweet Children performances that Larry Livermore was like, yo, I gotta sign these guys to Lookout Records. And at the very same time, there was this venue that was coming up in popularity. It was 924 Gilman Street, okay? This place served as a place for people to play shows and go to shows that were too young for clubs and maybe not hard enough for the actual hardcore punk scene. And to this day, Gilman is like holy grounds. It is the punk rock mecca. And at the very top of that punk rock mecca was this band known as Operation Ivy in the late 80s. Operation Ivy would only have a really short career before they disbanded, and then two of the members went on to start Rancid. But while they were like dominating in the punk scene over there in Gilman, Green Day put out this record called 39 Smooth and then this other one called Kerplunk on Lookout Records. And I know what you're thinking, you're like, Green Day, I thought this band was called Sweet Children. You didn't tell me about any band name change yet. And that's because there was this band in Gilman called Sweet Baby, okay? And they had to change their name to not be confused with this other band. And Green Day basically just meant like an afternoon smoking weed, and it was like the stupidest name ever, but it kind of caught on. So now we got the Lookout and Green Day connection, and that brought Trey Cool into the mix. And this guy's kind of rambunctious attitude, this guy's wild child nature was kind of the final missing ingredient that made Green Day Green Day. and they quickly became the #2 band in the scene, and their first show would be Operation Ivy's last show. And it was clear to everybody that Green Day was going to explode because their crowds looked a lot different than the typical punk rock crowds with just a bunch of guys running in circles and jumping on top of one another. This was a whole different thing. This was girls dancing in the front row. That's a completely new concept to the punk scene. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was something to take note of. And I think a lot of that reason was Billy Joe Armstrong wasn't writing about anarchy. He wasn't writing about the system. He was a 16-year-old guy writing about like the girls that didn't like him back. But it was kind of a novel thing coming from a hook-driven punk band at the time. In a scene where Nirvana's singing about like apathy and not caring about anything and just being too brooding to even like exist socially within the world, you had the bright and colorful and fast and snarling nature of Green Day coming up in the underground. And that would get the major labels interested. So that's when we gotta say, are these guys gonna be sellouts? And everybody was after Green Day because of the noise that they were making on the underground. Nirvana's label was like, we want them, but we don't want them because they're not like quite Nirvana yet. But then a sister label of Warner Brothers called Reprise comes in and snatches them up. But they're still signed to Lookout, right? So they gotta go over to Lookout Records with a bunch of lawyers, ironically named Con Man, to get the rights to the band to sign to another label, okay? But they did say, hey, Lookout Records, you can still have the rights to those original 2 records as long as you pay the royalties on time. But because they were signing to a major record label over here, their holy grounds, the punk rock mecca, 924 Gilman Street, would no longer allow them to play on their stage because Gilman was the strictest DIY punk rock ethos kind of place. No sexism, no racism, no stage diving, and most importantly, no major label bands. But they did allow them to play one final show in 1993, and that ban would go on all the way until 2015, where Green Day would play a surprise set back at Gilman. And this is after their entire storied career. So Reprise set Green Day up with Rob Cavallo over here, and they released, I don't know if you heard about it, but this record over here called Dookie. And the way that we remember it, it was like Dookie came out and then pop punk was a thing and everybody was so excited and it was bad anymore. But that's not really the way that it was. It was kind of a commercial failure at first and then just kind of had this slow burn on radio with the song Longview. But in 1994, something, I don't know, major happened. You might have heard about it, but Kurt Cobain ended his own life. And in that same year, Maximum Rock and Roll, which is a very influential punk zine, put out this issue over here that depicts, well, you see what it depicts, right? But it's not about Kurt Cobain. It's about like bands signing to major record labels, and it says, some of your friends are already this fucked. Very shocking imagery, right? And you can go read this issue in full on the Internet Archive. Very historic. So Green Day, they're signed to a major record label, but that is not being seen as a very successful endeavor right now. And everybody back in the underground, everybody back at Gilman, at Lookout, are like, you know what? You shouldn't have signed. You guys made a huge mistake. You're big and stupid. You don't have any of your underground cred. Get out of here. You guys are failing. But then Green Day got the opportunity of a lifetime. They got the chance to play Woodstock 94. Now, Woodstock 94 didn't really have the same message as the original Woodstock. This wasn't so much like peace and love as much as it was like, let's like sell a bunch of tickets. And what everybody remembers about Woodstock 94 is this set here. It is still talked about to this day. It starts off, everybody is so clean, everybody's just out there to play some music. Maybe they're gonna like us, maybe they're not gonna like us. And then, I don't know, about halfway through, people start to throw mud at the stage, okay? People are like, hey, we're gonna be throwing part of the dirt at you. Oh, I guess it's more than halfway through. It's near the end. Look at all these dirty people over here, okay? Now they're like, we gotta share the filth. And that's when they start sharing the filth, pelting the stage with mud. But let's be honest, mostly fecal matter. And it's the way that Green Day handled this. In this moment, this was sink or swim. If they would have cowered to the mud, the crowd would have turned on them. But because Billy Joe Armstrong branded them as mud hippies and idiots, he mooned them and gave them the finger and had this like whole 1994 attitude about him. People were like, we love this guy. This is our guy. This is our #1 guy. So in the span of this set, it went from we don't know who these guys are to we're going to turn on them and throw mud at them to we love this guy's our hero forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. There's nothing he can ever do wrong ever. And in this moment, when a legend was made, people started making calls. People started buying the record. The videos were being played on MTV all the time. And in early 1995, Dookie would shoot up all the way to number 2, only to be beaten by Garth Brooks, of course. And that explosion would see a trickle-down effect that would help underground labels like Epitaph to explode in popularity, and all the bands on these labels would reap the rewards of Green Day being at the top. But we're here to answer the main question. Did Green Day sell out with this record? And I'm saying, hell no, they did not. Dookie, to this day, is still a record with a ton of attitude, a ton of authenticity, and it comes from a very genuine place. These kids got an opportunity of a lifetime, and they ran with it. They made the most of their moments. They maximized their minutes, okay? Every chance that they got, they ran with it. They were touring the country way before they were signed, making a network for themselves before the internet. They knew how to do all this stuff before there was even a template to do it. They had that Black Flag tour grind, and it just paid off massively because they were writing very strong songs with super catchy hooks. Not only all that, they were in the right place at the right time. When Kurt died, that left a huge opening in the market for a new thing to shine, and that new thing was going to be Green Day. And love it or hate it, the story of Green Day paid off massively for them, and it'll be talked about until the end of time. So no, they didn't sell out, and sure, you don't sound cool or hip by saying you're listening to Green Day, but that shouldn't be what it's all about, right? So your homework for this evening is to go listen to those original records, and then listen to Dookie and Insomniac right after, and then ask yourself, did these guys sell out? And you'll realize quickly that they did not. If you disagree with me, you can tell me why down there in the comments, but also be courteous enough to leave some pancake emojis on your way out. Like and subscribe, ring the bell if you're cool as hell, and until my next upload, you can watch another upload.